Now, I want to give you the 6 best lenses for your new Sony ZV-E1, and guess what? None of them are this kit lens, but even better, 5 out of 6 of them are under $500, and the other is under $800, because if you're like me, you've probably gone bankrupt buying this guy. Now, I will give you the 5 lenses now, and one bonus because I literally just got it in the mail like 15 minutes ago, and I will be doing a whole video on it because, well, I'll get to that, but I will also include some honorable mentions at the end that could easily have made it to this list if I had unlimited funds, but there is one I'm already kicking myself for not picking up. But the first may be a bit of a shock, and I bought it from KEH the day after I pre-ordered the ZV-E1 because to me, something like this should have been the kit lens and not the 28-60 because the ZV-E1 is designed to be a vlogging camera, or as I prefer to call it, a travel/content creator camera because that sounds less vain, but in truth, it was designed for you to be in front of the camera, so all of these lenses, save for one special one, will fulfill that requirement of being wide enough for you to vlog on with, and this is why I had to go and sell some lenses and buy new ones, but with the dynamic stabilization on, which crops in at minimum 30%, so these lenses had to be super wide, and some people may hate that massive crop, but it is a feature that can actually save you money, and not because you don't need a gimbal, but there is that. But what that crop means is that you can throw an APS-C lens on the ZV-E1, which tend to be more compact, better for traveling, and way cheaper. So this is Sony's 10-18 APS-C lens with optical stabilization, optical steady shot, and I have to give credit where credit is due. I got this idea from Happy Latoya or whatever. He's great, but in his video, he shows you how to zoom past the vignetting, but because of the crop, you don't need to zoom in much, or you can use clear image zoom, which unlike other Sony cameras, with the ZV-E1, you do not lose any autofocus features when you use clear image zoom to zoom in. So basically you have crop mode, but even better because you get to precisely dial in how much crop you need. However, you can't use clear image zoom with dynamic stabilization turned on. Okay, let me show you what this lens looks like on now. So here's the 10-18mm f4. Okay, this is Sony's 10-18 f4 APS-C lens with optical steady shot, which has a maximum reach of 18, which feels really good. It's still not that tight, but I can back it up all the way to 10. Now look, you're getting that vignetting, but all I have to do is either use clear image zoom or I can just zoom into about, let's say we're about 12 to 13, and you might be getting a little bit more vignetting, so I could punch in even more. But even at this 13mm with the extra 30% crop of dynamic stabilization, it's still way good. Like you're getting all of this room, all this headroom, sort of the chest up, which is really nice. And although it's f4, not very fast, which is sort of perfect for vlogging outside because when you get a faster lens, you either need to use more variable ND or you have to speed up your shutter even more. So f4 is sort of that nice balance where you're not going to get as blown out clips. The highlights usually look okay, and I do have a variable ND on that I could sort of, darken up the image and keep my shutter respectably at 1/125th. And I got this lens for about $400, $450 on KEH, not sponsored. So I highly recommend checking them out as this lens is usually $900 new. So at $450, I think this is an amazing lens to pair with the Sony ZV-E1 because again, you get this reach and you get this reach, and I just really love that. Okay, I'll show you the next lens. So that's why I think a focal range like that for a kit lens like a 12-20 or even a 15-35 would make more sense on the ZV-E1. So here, just to compare, let me show you the kit lens that it does come with, the 28-60 with dynamic stabilization on. Okay, so this is Sony's 28-60 f4 to 5.6 kit lens, which is a really great lens overall for how affordable and lightweight it is. But this is far too cropped in for the dynamic stabilization. Again, a great lens, but I do not recommend getting it if you plan to vlog on this as much as you're supposed to with the Sony ZV-E1. So really high quality for the price, but I do not recommend it. Okay, I'll show you the next one. Now, another issue you have with most kit lenses is that their max aperture is usually f4, which is not very fast nor very exciting. So that's where this next lens comes in, and it's also an APS-C lens. This is Sigma's 16mm f1.4. Okay, this is Sigma's 16mm f1.4 APS-C lens. I got this lens for like $350. For the price, it's pretty amazing at how fast it is, and you get all this separation with depth of field. And also, again, the crop isn't that bad. So in post, I haven't cropped this in at all. This is exactly what you're getting. Obviously, there may be a little bit of vignetting, but with dynamic stabilization on, this 16 becomes closer to a 20, and maybe that 1.4 comes closer to a 1.8. And the best thing about this lens is that it's under $350. And the worst thing about this lens is it's huge. It's really big, and it's so bright that you need to stop it down by using a variable ND filter or a really high shutter speed to get it to work, which I'm doing right now, unless you have some good shade. But I think I'm at like 8 stops of ND, and it's still blown out for the most part. But it's a great lens because of the separation, and probably better to be shooting at nighttime, where you can use all those f1.4 stops of light to really brighten up your scene. But in the middle of the day like this, yeah, you're gonna get some overblown highlights if you don't have a good ND on. So if you actually just need something that's really wide and really fast, the Sigma 16 is the way to go. Okay, let me show you the next one. Now, the one drawback of the 16 is it's a bit heavy. So ideally finding something that is in that focal range that's faster than f4 and full frame and cheap and compact, well, that seems unlikely, right? And yet, this is where Samyang or Rokinon's 18mm f2.8 comes in. This may be the perfect all-around travel lens that may just stay attached to this camera when this one isn't on. Now, the best full-frame lens that I may keep attached to the Sony ZV-E1 is Rokinon's 18mm f2.8. This is the 4th Rokinon lens I have, and this may be the best overall lens other than my 24 1.8, but this may be the best for the Sony ZV-E1 because that 18mm is super wide. As you can see, with dynamic stabilization, the crop is still getting me really good sort of separation here, and it is giving me some headroom, which is really nice. So I love this lens because it's cheap. I think I got it for like $170. It's super lightweight, it's super compact. So if I only had to have one lens, I'd probably choose this one because again, it's fast enough, it's wide enough, it's cheap enough, and if anything happens, I think I could manage to get a new one, whereas some of the bigger lenses like my 20mm f1.8, you know, I'm a bit more cautious with that lens because it is more expensive, because it's bigger, and it is faster and better, but this is sort of just that great sort of middle ground. So this may be the best budget full frame option for your Sony ZV-E1. Here, let me show you the next one though. Now, before I give you the absolute best hands down full frame lens for the Sony ZV-E1, I wanted to include the super budget lens because obviously the ZV-E1 is more than just a vlogging camera. It shares the same sensor with the FX6, so it's a powerhouse of a camera. So I always keep one super fast artsy manual lens in my camera bag, and this is TTArtisans compact 35mm f.95. You heard that right, f.95 APS-C lens. And I mean, you could try to vlog on it. Okay, so this is TTArtisans 35mm f.95 APS-C lens. I'm not sure if I'm in focus here. It's obviously too tight to vlog on, but it is sort of interesting that you can use it as such at 35, even with a dynamic stabilization. I'm somewhere between like 43. So it's an interesting lens, but not really meant for my face. So here, I'll show you actually how you should use it. So yes, the best full frame lens for the Sony ZV-E1 is, and I'll give some honorable mentions and preview this bonus lens right after this, but the best is, and I'm not going to be the first to come to this conclusion, is the Sony G-Series 20mm f1.8, as it's light, reasonably compact, bright, and performs flawlessly. But the caveat is the price. So let me show you and you can judge for yourself, is it worth it? And is 20 after the crop still too tight? So this may be the best overall lens for the Sony ZV-E1. This is a 20mm f1.8 G-Series lens that for the price and for the size, it's pretty much perfect. Now, it is the most expensive lens on the list at around $800. I've seen it used for a little bit cheaper, but it pretty much keeps its value because the quality of it is so amazing. Now, this 20mm, once cropped in with dynamic stabilization, is a little tight. I think we're at about 23, 24. It may not be wide enough, but it certainly is fast enough. You're getting great separation with an f1.8. And I would typically use this if I wanted the best image possible. It is not the smallest, it's not the cheapest, but it is the fastest on this list. And there's a case to be made that this is not wide enough after the dynamic stabilization crop. And I can't imagine I'm going to use this as much as some of the wider angle lenses because of the crop. It is pretty tight, it's pretty heavy, and it's expensive, so it's not something I'm going to keep attached to the Sony ZV-E1 unless I really want the best quality image, which I may do at some occasions. So knowing that, I may not use this as much as the 18 or the 10-18. It's still great, and I love the f1.8, but it's worth knowing that that is one of the downsides. So the 20 is one of the best lenses I own for sure, but I could imagine these honorable mentions being maybe better value buys considering the ZV-E1's crop, and I'm still kicking myself for not picking up the last one. But first is Sony's APS-C 15mm f1.4. Then Sony's APS-C Power Zoom, the 10-20 f4, which is pricey, but having the zoom rocker with the power zoom might be worth it. It's basically a modern version of my first recommendation, but without the optical steady shot. Then we get a full frame recommendation, which is Tamron's 20-40 f4. This may be the best overall zoom range if you really could only get one lens to cover all your needs. Yet, finally, the one I may need to sell some more gear for is Sony's 11mm f1.8. It's the super wide, fast, and under $500, but for now, I am happy with my purchases, and I hope you will be too. And if you're interested in the 10-18, I say run to buy this now, because if the word gets out, I think the prices will go up. So before I wrap this up, I want to do a preview on this guy before I do an in-depth review on it, as it might be the perfect travel lens to keep attached to your camera. This is TTArtisans 27mm f2.8 autofocus. Yes, autofocus lens. Even though it is an APS-C lens with the dynamic stabilization on, you don't get any vignetting. Here, check this out. Okay, so this is TTArtisans 27mm f2.8 APS-C lens, and the best thing about this lens is how small it is and cheap it is. It's like under $160. The worst thing about it is it's f2.8 and it's a crop sensor 27. So due to the 27 being a little bit too tight, the dynamic stabilization shifts a bit. So you're going to see a bit more jumping than you'd normally get in like a wider field of view. So it's not great for vlogging per se. It is a better sort of street and travel lens that I actually just keep it on when I'm traveling it, because it just fits. I literally can fit it in my pocket as it is, and it's pretty much the perfect lens just to keep attached instead of a lens cap. So I really love this TTArtisans 27mm. Oh, also it is autofocus, which is, I think, maybe their first lens that's an autofocus lens. And it's so compact. Again, I just really love it. And I'm going to do a full lens review on this lens because it is something I think more people need to consider because of the price and because of just how great and compact it is. Okay, now let me know if there are any lenses that I might have missed, or which ones you have or are thinking of getting for the ZV-E1, or really any Sony. I've got a bunch more videos about videos on the way, so consider following along and subscribing. All right, thanks guys. Bye.